It was an outrageous story. I mean, I admit it, but it was true.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're looking at those incredibly suspicious of other people or institutions and were mistreated only to be proven right.
We're teaching the politicians to be straight and not crooked.
Rachel Carson. Since ancient times, farmers have utilized various forms of pesticides. This made it easy for mid-20th century America to accept the rollout of DDT, a sprayable chemical that could eradicate most insects.
And here is our first headline. Science can now rid the country of mosquitoes. The mosquito is doomed.
Some, like Rachel Carson, were against it from the beginning. In her book, Silent Spring, published in 1962, she laid out the dangers it presented to the environment and human health.
No witchcraft, no enemy action had snuffed out life in this stricken world. The people had done it themselves.
Her concerns were met with jeers from the chemical industry, who threw baseless and misogynistic attacks at her.
I know that many thoughtful scientists are deeply disturbed that their organizations are becoming fronts for industry.
Carson passed away just 2 years later, meaning she wouldn't live to see just how right she was. It was banned for agricultural use in 1972, but its effects still affect wildlife and human populations today.
Her message was that there's an ongoing story. It doesn't just stop with the removal of pesticides.
Russ Tice. A government going out of its way to spy on its own people sounds ludicrous. Yet in 2005, Russ Tice risked his job at the National Security Agency to expose that very behavior. He claimed that the NSA and Defense Intelligence Agency were listening in on some civilians' conversations.
It didn't matter whether you were in Kansas, in the middle of the country, and you never made a communication or a foreign communications at all. They monitored all communication.
He attempted to take these concerns to Congress, but was swiftly silenced in the form of being forced to undergo a psychological evaluation, where he was diagnosed with paranoia.
I think most people realize I'm not crazy now, but back then it was like, hey, that guy's crazy, and you in the press would go, ooh, is he really crazy or not?
Yeah.
The whistleblower never backed down, leading to conservative figureheads like Bill O'Reilly calling for his arrest.
Well, the bottom line on this is that Tice made some very serious accusations. He went on NBC News, and he can't back them up.
Though President Bush admitted to allowing some citizens to be spied on in 2006, Tice wouldn't be believed until 2013, when Edward Snowden revealed the true depth of their mass surveillance.
So I just want to get a sense of why did you decide to do what you've done?
So for me, it all comes down to state power against the people's ability to meaningfully oppose that power.
Adrien Schoolcraft. The idea of the police working against those they're meant to help is unfathomable to some.
I've been covering the police department for almost 20 years, and this is the craziest story that I ever came across in my entire period.
As a member of the NYPD, Adrien Schoolcraft was eager to help the city and its citizens. When he began to offhandedly record conversations, he got footage of the department enforcing arrest quotas and encouraging officers to charge people with whatever possible. Schoolcraft turned on his own and reported them. He was met with harassment and was even demoted to desk duty. He refused to remain silent, leading to him being forcibly hospitalized, which he also recorded. After being fired, he published everything.
The commissioner is probably the most prominent law enforcement official in the country. You have a billionaire mayor, and they're worried about their legacies. And here's little Adrien Schoolcraft saying, giving a completely different narrative to the last 8 years.
A report made in 2012 found that he'd been right, and in more recent years, more officers have come forward to speak against the quota system.
The way I think about it is, say a fireman is told by his supervisor, we need you to put out 15 fires this month. And if you don't put out 15 fires, you're going to get penalized.
Gene Seberg. In the mid-20th century, Gene Seberg was on track to become the face of the French New Wave film movement.
Je voudrais penser à quelque chose, et je n'arrive pas.
Yet, after a series of financial donations to civil rights groups such as the NAACP in the 1960s, her career was suddenly derailed.
We all wear masks all the time. You never see an actor act more on stage than you see them act in a restaurant when you're having dinner with them.
False stories regarding the father of her child were spread, causing her reputation to nosedive. She wasn't safe outside of the public eye either, with her phone calls being tapped and published and her home being broken into. The entire time, she was aware of the stalking and defamation, leading to a psychological breakdown. In 1979, she took her own life and cited her nerves as the main reason. Only then did the FBI confess to its COINTELPRO campaign.
I believe one day the truth will be revealed. Thank you.
Harry Markopolos. This should be a lesson to all not to disregard credible warnings. As far back as 1999, financial fraud investigator Harry Markopolos collected evidence implicating financier Bernie Madoff in a massive fraud case.
Harry started engineering it, looking at it, and dissecting the returns, and he's, after 4 hours of work or so, came up and said, "Frank, this is a Ponzi scheme." I said, "Harry, that's a strong word." And Harry says, "Look at this, the market goes down, he's not hurt at all, he produces 1%. Market goes up, he produces 1%.
He brought his concerns to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission 3 separate times and was ignored. Meanwhile, the cost of Madoff's Ponzi scheme climbed higher. Markopolos didn't give up, though he began to fear that Madoff or one of his associates would harm him. His 2005 attempt, a 21-page analysis dating back nearly 15 years, was still ignored.
Well, if the people there aren't trained in securities work, what are they trained in?
How to look at pieces of paper that the securities laws require. They can check every piece of paper perfectly and find misdemeanors, and they'll miss all the financial felonies that are occurring because they never look there. Even when pointed to fraud, they're incapable of finding fraud.
In 2008, the bubble surrounding Madoff popped. By then, tens of billions of dollars had been defrauded, and Markopolos got the opportunity to admonish the SEC for ignoring him for so long.
When an entire industry that you were supposed to be regulating disappears due to unregulated, unchecked greed, then you are both a captive regulator and a failed regulator.
Christine Collins. In 1928, Christine Collins experienced every parent's worst nightmare when her son Walter went missing.
I'm calling to report a missing child. Missing child.
What's your relation to the child, ma'am?
It's my son.
After months, the LAPD claimed they found him in Illinois. She was relieved until she actually saw him and realized he wasn't her son at all.
It's not my son.
What? What are you saying?
It's not my son.
Her concerns were brushed aside, and she reluctantly took the imposter home. Weeks later, she brought dental records to prove her case, earning herself a forced commitment to a psychiatric hospital. It wasn't until the child himself was questioned that they learned he'd been lying in order to get a free trip to Hollywood to meet his favorite movie star, Tom Mix. Collins was freed 10 days later. Though she was vindicated, she never saw any restitution from the police, and her son was never found.
Maybe Walter's out there having the same fears that he did. Afraid to come home and identify himself, or afraid he'll get into trouble. But either way, it gives me something I didn't have before tonight.
What's that?
Hope.
Martha Mitchell. When Martha Mitchell first came to Washington, D.C., she made a name for herself as a professional gossip, especially when it came to politics.
If I'm doing anything wrong in this government, just tell me about it.
When the Democratic National Committee headquarters were broken into in 1972, Mitchell suspected her husband and the Nixon re-election committee he was part of. She tried calling a journalist, but the call was cut.
I'm in the office and the phone rings and it's Martha Mitchell.
Days later, she was found beaten and imprisoned at the Westchester Country Club. She'd claimed to have been dragged and kidnapped by Nixon's men, all while they ruined her reputation.
I'll tell them all. And you know what they're going to do? They'll probably end up killing me.
When the smoke cleared, she'd lost everything from her marriage to her connections. In 1975, her story was corroborated by one of the perpetrators of the Watergate burglary, proving that she'd been telling the truth. Ignaz Semmelweis. In the 19th century, Ignaz Semmelweis was a champion for women's health. and lost everything because of it.
Although he couldn't explain why hand disinfection was so effective, his research in 1847 would go on to transform the way surgery is carried out.
It all began at Vienna General Hospital, when he saw female patients getting different results depending on what ward they were admitted to, as one was more deadly. After extensive research, he learned that the women were being exposed to illness due to doctors handling corpses beforehand. He suggested that professionals wash their hands to lower those chances.
He ordered the students to wash their hands in a solution of chlorinated lime before each examination.
Despite the fact that his findings saved several lives, his theory was ridiculed and he was fired.
The medical community really didn't want to change.
After continuing to defend himself, he was committed. He passed just 2 weeks later, and his findings would continue to be ignored until Louis Pasteur expanded upon them in his own work. Gary Webb. Much like mass surveillance, the idea of government organizations funneling harmful substances into civilian neighborhoods may have once sounded absurd. Gary Webb had built a life and reputation for himself as a journalist. His career and life changed forever when he worked on the Dark Alliance series, which posited that the crack epidemic in the 1980s was started by the Nicaraguan Contras, supported by the CIA.
And we showed it very conclusively that that was the case.
His claims were embraced by some and derided by others, with the administration and his publisher falling into the latter camp.
What we found was that they were selling this stuff in South Central, which is, predominantly black section of Los Angeles.
Webb took his own life in 2004, though many suspect murder. An internal investigation found the CIA knew about Contra's involvement, and that they'd stopped other agencies from investigating them.
The real tragedy here is that as far as we know, no one from the CIA or the mainstream media even lost their jobs over this. The only people who suffered for it were the journalists who exposed the story and the millions of people targeted by the unjust and racist laws that were passed in response to the 1980s crack crisis.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway is widely considered to be one of the greatest American authors.
In 1950, the New York Times declared Ernest Hemingway the most important writer since the death of Shakespeare.
He was also convinced he was being targeted by the government.
He and Mary and some friends had dinner at the Christiana restaurant in Ketchum. Still is in place. You can go there anytime. And he felt that there was a guy in a trench coat sitting in the restaurant, and he thought it was an agent.
He feared that they were tracking his every move, leading to intense paranoia that led to inpatient treatment and several electroconvulsive shock treatments.
It's like being electrocuted 20 times.
It was only after he took his life in 1961 that the truth came out. Not only had the FBI been tracking him since he'd patrolled Cuban waters during World War II, they had created a 124-page file about him. Though he was right the whole time, that answer came at the cost of his own life. Which of these rightfully paranoid people do you feel were the most mistreated? Let us know in the comments below.